Hello and welcome back to the Villa Filler podcast. I'm here as always with my good friend Dan Wiseman. Dan, Aston Villa 1, Leicester City 2. First of all, how you doing, mate?
I'm good, mate. A lot better that we've been able to get this out relatively well so far. Fingers crossed.
Fingers crossed, yeah.
Knock
Knock
on
on
wood.
wood.
It's been pretty pain-free because the last few weeks, for some reason, the internet has truly conspired against us. But no, it seems relatively pain-free so far. And what ended up being a relatively pain-free afternoon, didn't it? It was looking a bit sketchy at one point when we went 2 goals down pretty early on. I was fearing the worst, to be honest with you, Dan. I was texting my mates going, this is going to be a mauling, lads. I'm not looking forward to this. But I thought we did a pretty good job of turning it around. And, we always try to be the faces of optimism amongst Aston Villa fans, don't we? And I feel like I can be that again today. I've come away from that defeat, and I'm not feeling too down about it, to be honest with you, mate.
I think going straight into the game, the first thing we have to acknowledge is, would Jack Grealish have made that much of a difference on the game today? Arguably not. He'd been marked out of the game the past few times, and we saw how Leicester had set up in their 4-2-3-1 with Ricardo Pereira and Castagne, both operating on that right flank, that they were there to nullify the threat of Jack Grealish. So would Villa have necessarily done better? I mean, there's always that possibility, but we can't pin defeat solely on the lack of Jack Grealish. I find it lazy that Sky Sports are saying that. Even, seeing someone like Micah Richards and Alex Scott saying that as well, I regard them as very good pundits. I feel like it's a very easy cop-out to say Villa are better with Jack Grealish. I mean, of course we are. We can't pin today's loss on that. And I think what as well we have to highlight, Dan, how good Leicester were, especially in that opening half.
Definitely.
They really did take the foot off the gas. James Maddison is cruising to take that England spot that Ross Barkley's gunning for. It's unfortunate, but Ross is not going on that plane, unfortunately.
No.
I don't think that's an unpopular opinion anymore. It's there are reasons to this. There's layers to Barkley's performances. I don't think it's just the blanket. He's crap. He clearly isn't fit yet. But James Maddison, Dan, took his goal very well. The first goal, I was very. I was a bit frustrated at how easily Villa got sucked in, but when I believe it was Yuri Tielemans who looked to play that ball to Vardy first off. You're going to get sucked in. Jamie Vardy's the threat, playing that ball over the top. It's no reason why the defence shouldn't shuffle across to that side. That ball initially wasn't dealt with in the best way by Konsa and Elmo there, who I felt struggled throughout the 90 minutes on Mohamedy. And listen, it was a brilliant goal from James Maddison, wasn't it, Dan?
Yeah, absolutely, mate. And if there was anything remotely sweet about the goal going in, was that it was something I warned Dean Smith about exclusively in my preview, and I trust that he must have watched the preview. So whether he just didn't take notes of that particular section or whatever, I don't know. But this is the problem when you play against Leicester, is that you're so wary of those through balls, those ones over the top for Barnes and for Vardy, that you can regress quite deep subconsciously into your own penalty box. And that's when you've got the likes of Maddison, the likes of Barnes, Tielemans and Didi, even when you look outside of the first team squad, the likes of Mark Brighton and so on, all pose a threat from range. And since his Premier League debut in August 2018, Maddison has scored more goals from outside the penalty area than any other player in the league. That's his 11th since that time. So, if you're speaking statistically, that's the most dangerous player in the league from that position. And I felt that we did do exactly that. I think we dropped just a bit too deep. I think if you're being sort of hypercritical, Mings could maybe get out a little bit quicker, but I don't really want to get sucked into that, because it was a really good goal, mate. And that Emmy will be, I think, a little bit. I'm not saying that he should have done better, but Emmy gets a hand to it, and being the good goalkeeper that he is, I think he'll feel that if he can get enough hand to it, then he could have saved that. And that's not me saying he should have saved it, but we know how high Emmy's standards are after that West Ham game. I think he's going to feel that he could have done something, maybe just get it onto the post. But no, I think you have to take it for what it is, and it was a great goal by James Maddison, and it was built up to be this big battle of, as it always is when Grealish and Maddison played, these big battle of those two midfielders. Southgate was in attendance, I imagine, for that reason. I don't know if you saw the pre-match graphic from Leicester either, Dan, but it was
Catch me if you can.
Even they were putting that spin on things, and the fact that Jack wasn't there to sort of counteract that, was a bit of a shame. But no, it was a good goal from Maddison, and I think ultimately, without there were a lot of issues in the team at that time, but with that first goal, you just had to sort of tip your hat to that one, didn't you?
Yeah, I mean, Emmy's at full stretch, and as you say, gets a hand to it. By his standards, as you say, he's going to be very frustrated. I don't think we can, as you said, we can't really blame him for that. It's a very well worked goal. It's vintage Leicester, as you say. You would back Maddison. You would put your entire mortgage on Maddison scoring from that kind of a position, regardless of who the goalkeeper is. And that early assertion of dominance from Leicester, they scored not so long after as well. Harvey Barnes, who is, I believe, 13 goals now in the Premier League this in all competitions. Sorry, this season, absolutely electrifying. As you alluded to earlier, Dan, it was always Grealish versus Maddison in the Championship, and then all of a sudden it became Grealish versus Barnes because West Brom are West Brom, and they're just obsessed. And I always liked Harvey Barnes. I never quite thought he was quite there, but the heights we're seeing him reach now in the Premier League, Dan, it's remarkable. And I was having this debate with a few mates the other day at work. Where does Harvey Barnes, his hat is well and truly in the ring for an England call-up. Where does he fit in? How does he fit in? I don't know, because we've got Phil Foden, we've got Mason Greenwood, who's an outside shout, Jack Grealish, James Maddison, Barkley, if you've got claret and blue tinted spectacles on. There's so many players who can play in that position. And the goal, for me, it perfectly summarised Harvey Barnes' work rate, his ethic as a player. Jamie Vardy gets the shot off, it's initially saved, and he is busting a gut to get to that ball. And Emmy, there's not much he can do. He has to try and make himself big there. He opts to dive down, try and catch, get on top of the ball. But when a player is as quick and as clinical as Harvey Barnes, that's always going to be difficult. So he left him with a fairly big target. But, a lot of players would have probably missed that. If I would not have backed any of Villa's players today to have scored that opportunity, had it have fallen to them, Dan. Harvey Barnes is, and I feel like I can appreciate him a bit more now because he isn't playing for West Brom. But it was a very clinical finish, and as I say, wonderful player. There's a lot to like about Leicester, Dan, isn't there, to be fair? And I don't want to come here and just, wax lyrical about Leicester because first half we certainly weren't at it. And don't worry, we'll get to the second half where we felt Villa played better, but deserving leaders of 2-0 at that point in the game, Dan.
Yeah, absolutely. I don't want to dwell on it too much because the game ended on a far more positive note than this. But no, I thought the midfield especially was atrocious in the first half. Douglas Luiz, I don't think I saw him until about 35 minutes in the game. John McGinn positionally on the defensive end was all over the place. And I felt that today, I think what you said at the top of the pod, Dan, about Jack not being missed in the game is probably fair, but offensively, definitely. But defensively, I think we missed him more than we realised. And that was the thing when I saw that Jack wasn't in the team, is that you miss him and what he provides on the defensive end. And that's an underrated aspect of Jack Grealish. He is always the first to set that press trigger. He knows the system inside out. He knows when to press, when to drop off. And he really leads that forward line in that. Often you see him pressing with Ollie in a two. If you look at his defensive stats over the last few games, this season, he's pitched in with 27 tackles, 20 block shots, 11 interceptions. And those are numbers that most fullbacks would be proud of. And that's coming off Jack, who is obviously touted so highly because of what he does going forward. But I felt that Villa did miss that leadership perhaps in the first half. And I think if there was ever an advert for how much of a leader that, we were speaking on this podcast a little while ago, Dan, about the type of captain that Jack Grealish is, whether you've got Tyrone, who's the vocal leader, but I think perhaps we saw today that in terms of leading that midfield and being vocal in that area, perhaps that's where you do miss Jack a little bit. And look, I didn't expect us to win the game without Grealish today. He started the last, there were some crazy stats flying about before the game. He's started the last 48 games for Aston Villa. Since promotion, we've only played a Premier League game without Jack twice, and we lost both of them. The last time we won without Jack was a 2-1 win against Bristol City back in April 2019. So we haven't won a game without Jack Grealish in the side since the promotion, which is just absolutely nuts. And so when you're playing a side like Leicester, I wasn't expecting the win without Jack, but when we went in at half time, I thought we got better as the half went on, but yeah, it was a particularly poor first half. But Dean must have gotten into the lads, and we often give Dean a little, not stick, but we often leave feeling that we wanted a bit more from Dean tactically sometimes, don't we?
Yeah.
substitution wise, especially. But tactically, there's a little bit that we've been a bit dissatisfied, but we have to give him full dues today because he reorganised that Villa side in the second half. We seem to be a lot more tenacious. We seem to be far hungrier in terms of getting the ball back. We were a lot more effective at moving the ball through the thirds and creating chances. And that was perhaps shown best, Dan, by the goal that we got. Literally, what was it? 2 minutes into the second half with this podcast's favourite Villa player at the moment, Bertrand Traore, on the score sheet yet again. 6th this season for him.
I'm proud to say, Dan, been on the bandwagon since day one, on the back of your home shirt. Nobody can tell us otherwise. This podcast absolutely loves Bertrand Traore, and rightly so. And I tweeted, Dan, and I don't know if you saw it, but most of Twitter throughout the first half, very critical of Bertrand when he didn't. Yeah, maybe he could have made one or two passes a bit better. Movement could have been a bit better, but to blame a winger on your defensive performance when the midfield was as missing as it was. The midfield was non-existent in that first half. That's the reason why Leicester got that second goal. Dan didn't really touch on it too much, but ghosted past us from the throw in there, and that obviously led to Barnes' goal. Dougie, McGinn, Barkley didn't come close to laying a gauntlet on any Leicester player in the build-up to that goal. So to scapegoat Bertrand for that first half performance, I find very strange, and I hope a lot of people were eating humble pie when he scored that goal. It was so well worked, Dan, from the ball into the box, and a lot of criticism comes of Matt Targett for his deliveries, not getting above knee height or whatever. But it was a perfect ball into the box. It was good to see Bertrand occupy that position because, as we see with Watkins, he likes to drift out wide. The stats show that. The heat maps show that. He was a winger, obviously, we know that. And I often feel like at times when he does that, despite, he's clearly trying to bring other people into the game, I don't think Villa necessarily have the legs nor the intelligence in the midfield to make them runs to fill the space that Watkins provides by drifting out to the left. Bertrand was so switched on to get into that space. Leicester, albeit very poor defensively, I think they were just trying to see the game out. They probably didn't think that Villa were really going to come at them with too much, but it's a very good finish. And I think what we need to talk about more, Dan, is Kasper Schmeichel's incident after the goal.
Was weird, wasn't it?
Leaning on Bertrand Traore, not very sportsmanlike at all. I didn't really understand what was going on at first.
That was weird, wasn't it?
Bertrand didn't foul Schmeichel. Schmeichel came out of his goal. Bertrand scored. They're both, they're essentially on top of each other. No contact has been made between the two of them. And Schmeichel just kneels on Bertrand. I mean, Dan, goalkeepers union, I know, but you can't stick up for that, man. You can't.
No, that was bizarre, mate. I really don't know what went on there, but that's I think that Leicester that really rocked them, and I don't think they really got going after that goal, to be honest with you, Dan. And I don't think they were expecting that retaliation from Villa. I don't think I was expecting that retaliation from Villa, but I was very happy to see it happen. And you're right in that. I think just how unexpected that goal was, and the move was so nicely put together down that left hand side. Shout out again to Matt Targett, who was, as you said, was crucial in that, but played yet another. I can't fault him again today. I thought he had another excellent game. But when we put that move together down the left, considering in the first half we'd lost possession 74 times in the first 45 minutes, 74 times, that's almost twice a minute, to go then put that move down together down the left. There was some really nice back heels involved. Matty puts that ball in, it's flicked on by Ollie, does a really nice job, and then there is Bertrand Traore. And this is what you were saying, Dan, when we said last week that we felt that Bertrand Traore became the scapegoat of that Brighton game because he was the first substitute, and neither of us could understand why. And considering the run he's been on since about sort of November, since November, Bertrand has been involved in 8 goals in the Premier League, 5 goals, 3 assists. Only Jack has been involved more in that time. He has 10. So he's only 2 goal involvements off Jack Grealish. It seemed bizarre to take him off first against Brighton because considering he can just come up with something and be in the moment at the right time and get you back in the game. I felt that he was a little bit hard done by against Brighton to come off because of that. But yet again, we feel like in scoring that goal, he's nailed that spot down, and it's got to be his now, I think, for the end of the season. I think considering how El Ghazi was, I don't want to be too harsh on Anwar because he hasn't played in a long time. It's a tough side to get back involved with, and it's a tough boot. That's the biggest set of boots in the club to go and fill is Jack Grealish. So don't want to be too harsh on Anwar, but it wasn't his best afternoon. Trezeguet, I thought, was relatively similar. But no, Bertie's done really well, and it was a good goal for him. I think we did really well to get back in the game and make something of that. But you can't help but feel that I felt that game for me, Dan. I don't know about you. This is sort of going right back to the start, but it was screaming out for Marvelous Nakamba. And I feel sorry for Marv because he hasn't really done too much to get dropped. And I feel like when you're starting that game, knowing that you're going to be on the back foot, knowing that you haven't got Grealish, that possession is going to be hard to come by, having someone that can win it back as easily and as successfully as Marvelous Nakamba done, it just felt like, he can really feel quite aggrieved that he hasn't played more in the last few games.
Yeah, and I think the thing that I find incredibly frustrating about this is I feel like Villa fans are constantly drawn into comparing Douglas and Marv like for like. And they're quite clearly two very different players who play in the same position and are going to be more effective in certain things where, I feel like where Douglas lacks, Marvelous makes up for that, and where vice versa.
Yeah,
quite clearly, if you want someone a progressive six who's going to look up, play beautiful balls, score screamers, albeit it's been a while since he's done that, Douglas is your man. If you need some grit in that midfield, if you need someone who's going to win the ball back, Marv's your guy. He really is, and it's a debate that has been had a lot on Twitter, and I feel like some Villa fans just aren't getting it when we're saying, and I'm not, this isn't just us, Dan. People who are saying, I think Marv needs to come on. It's not saying that Marvelous is a better player than Douglas Luiz. It is saying that his attributes are more suited for the situation that Aston Villa find themselves in that specific game.
100%.
And it's this game management. And I think, to be fair, Dan, despite getting the goal early on, the changes that Dean made, but the initial change of changing Trezeguet for El Ghazi is one that we've criticised many a time, Dan, because Dean's plan B is plan A, just with a different player in the same position. At that moment in the game, especially when Douglas Luiz is booked, especially when El Mohammadi is booked, it would have made so much more sense to have brought Marvelous Nakamba on. Now, he hasn't played as many games. Villa haven't conceded a goal when Marvelous Nakamba has been on the pitch. He's made 8 tackles in the game in the 3.5 games he's played. Let's say, he out of those 8 tackles, he has made 5 winning tackles. But he's dispossessed the team and retained possession 5 times. That is vital because, again, to go back to what I said earlier, Dan, the midfield, it was non-existent. You needed that player to come in to win possession, to keep hold of the ball. And yeah, his passing range isn't as good as Douglas Luiz's, but if he can, lay it off short to McGinn, lay it off short to Ross Barkley, then Villa are absolutely in business. And it was a frustrating one that he didn't come on. Obviously, we were kind of walking on eggshells with the Douglas Luiz yellow card, which was scandalous because Barnes tripped himself up. But that is a story for another day. Again, Dan, the substitutions, they got better, though. They did get better. I wanted to see Sanson earlier. We can't expect this man to have an impact on a game when he has 9 minutes to play plus additional time. We really can't. But Jacob Ramsey, Dan, I mean, he looks so comfortable on the ball. He's got wisdom beyond his age. He's playing very nice outside of the foot passes. He's showing for the ball. He's driving at defences. And I feel like he's come on such a long way, even in, the brief cameos that he's made. We saw him start against Wolves. He looked very good. But now we're seeing a much more assured young man who is stepping up to the challenge and arguably starts next week against Leeds.
Yeah, well, this is the thing, mate, is that, to be honest with you, I think both of the lads that have come on, and I thought this of Sanson against Brighton as well, and I thought of both JJ and Morgan today, is that I thought they showed a lot more in that time than a lot of the other players on the pitch. And the more that you grow, Look, there's two ways you can look at this, Dan. I think you can reward players for what they've done this season. Absolutely, this is the best Villa side that you and I have seen in a long, long time, or anyone has seen in a long, long
Yeah.
time. And the lads that have got Villa to this point, and the lads that have played so well in the first half of the season, deserve and ultimately have rights to certain places in the starting 11. However, once you start to reward players for mediocrity, which it was against Brighton, and for a large part of the
That's
games
being
was against.
generous, Dan.
Yeah, well, yeah, exactly, and it was again today. Once you start rewarding players for that, and once players start getting a bit comfortable knowing that, and I'm not saying at all that this is going on, but once players start to think that, it doesn't matter, I'm going to be starting next week anyway, that's when players get a little bit too comfortable, and when ultimately you start to see complacency creep in. I'm not saying that's what's going on, but that's what Villa need to avoid. And I think when you've got two players like JJ, like Morgan, like Marv, I don't think it's a coincidence that when you see all of these players come into the side, especially in midfield, they all play with hunger. They all play that have got something to prove, and ultimately often end up playing better than the people that they're replacing. And so I think when you come up against Leeds, I think for too long now, Villa have games have been won and often lost in the midfield. I think we have to see some changes in there. I think Morgan now will be starting to get to the point where I think you can feel, considering the results that Villa have been playing, pretty aggrieved that he's only getting 10 minutes here and there, considering he's often seen Villa on the losing side of the score sheet, or in the case of Brighton, drawing. I think we need to make some changes in that midfield. I think that will ultimately be better in that game, but then going forward as well, because then you've got the option of bringing the likes of McGinn back into the team, bringing Douglas back into the team if it doesn't work out quite well, and I think that's a breath of fresh air in itself. And so I really hope that for that Leeds game, which won't be an easy one, as we saw early on in the season, we saw what Leeds can do to us at the best of times. I think we do need to freshen things up for sure.
Yeah, and especially when Ramsey's coming on, and of course this is with no disrespect at all because Jacob is a fine player, but if you're Sanson and you're seeing a 20-year-old, kid come on and he's getting on ahead of you, and they've just signed you for a hefty fee, and you've left, a club who's playing European football to come to Aston Villa, you're going to be pretty pissed off. You just are.
Yeah,
That's just how it works.
no, you're
I
absolutely
would
right.
be, he has every right to be as well. Again, there's no disrespect at all to Ramsey, but it's a difficult one actually because Leeds next week, Dan, that's going to be very tough. And I mean, I had a stinker in FPL, Dan. I captained Bamford as it's a double game week for Leeds, and didn't quite do the business last night, did they, against Wolves? Obviously, a very unfortunate own goal. And I think you said it in your preview, Dan. We said it last week in the podcast. In the brief preview we did at the end. Brendan Rodgers, undoubtedly one of the best tactical minds in English football, debatable, in European football as well. And now we're coming up against the granddaddy of, just beautiful, full on attacking, gegenpressing like hell football that Marcelo Bielsa is known for, and that Mauricio Pochettino and Pep Guardiola and the like idolise and obsess over. And it's going to be really difficult. And if Villa put in anywhere near a performance that they did in the first half today against Leeds, they're going to get absolutely walked over, Dan. And this is something that we will explore a bit later on in the week during my preview, Dan. But to talk on it briefly, it's going to be tough. Leeds are going to be hungry. It was nice to actually see Sky Sports label yesterday's game between Wolves and Leeds as a battle of mid-table teams, which was very nice to see considering how much they've been hyping Leeds up. But with that being said, Dan, it's going to be a very difficult test for Villa next week.
Yeah, absolutely. And Leeds they've dropped off a little bit. They've only got one win in their last four, but let me cast your mind back to the very end of Jan, and when they took Leicester apart in their own backyard, they went and beaten 3-1 at the King Power, and Leeds were exceptional that day. But they do play between now and next Saturday. It's a 5:30 kickoff at Ellen Road. They do play on Tuesday against Southampton, who showed glimpses of what they were earlier on in the season in yesterday's draw with Chelsea. So that's not going to be an easy game in itself. So Villa have got a few days rest on Leeds, which is sort of might be scraping the barrel a little bit there, looking for positives, but it's something to take. And I'm looking forward to how you dissect that in your preview, Dan, because as you're right, Leeds are such an interesting and one of the most probably one of, if not the most tactically complex sides in the league. I think, you can say a lot for Marcelo Bielsa, and I do think Leeds have been a little bit overhyped at certain points this season. But you have to commend what he's been able to do with a squad that, pound for pound, player name for player name, wouldn't look out of place in most relegation candidate teams. I think if you put most other managers in the world in charge of that squad, I don't think they get what Marcelo has been able to get out of them some weeks. So, yeah, no, that will be a really interesting game, mate. And I think ultimately Villa need to show a bit more. We need to have a bit of an upturn in form. We're due a win, I feel. And with West Ham getting more and more positive results, that's a newcomer into the top six. That's a spot that's been taken up, and I think Villa need to really mark their territory and sort of gauge exactly what Villa we can expect going into the final runs of the season.
Absolutely, and I think we do need to reiterate, Dan, it is probably a jump too far European football this season. The squad isn't quite there. I mean, you just got to look at Leicester going to Slavia Prague, got the business done there. There was fans there as well, which is, crazy to think about at the moment with how things are in England. And they've come and they've done the job, only 3 days later. So I don't, if the shoe was on the other foot, I don't see Villa doing the business in that respect, which is unfortunate. There's a game going on right now, Dan. Raheem Sterling's put Manchester City 1-0 up against Arsenal within the second minute. A lot of FPL players will be annoyed at that because I think Sterling's one of the most transferred out players ahead of this game week. So that's a bit heavy for you guys who may have traded out Sterling. But listen, we will be back with some content midweek. It will be my turn previewing Aston Villa versus Leeds in 150 seconds. It's great to see all of the wonderful feedback that you left on both of the videos. There's a few of you guys who said the audio wasn't great, but it's great for mine. That is obviously that's resolved for Dan's. It'll be resolved for mine as well. So it's great to see you guys are appreciating the content. We really do appreciate that. It means the most. If you enjoyed this podcast, we're closing in on 4,000 subscribers. We really want to get that before the end of the season. So if you could subscribe to the channel, if you're not, that would mean the most, as 56% of you guys who listen to these podcasts, you're not subscribed. It's free. Just do it. You're watching anyway. You guys are clearly enjoying it. You guys are hitting the like button. And if you haven't, make sure you do. And comment your thoughts below on the game. Who was your man of the match? And what are you looking forward to in this Leeds game? We'd love to know. So as I said, like, comment, subscribe, and up the Villa.